there's this class called Authentic Manhood. All right. In Authentic Manhood, you are taught that as the man, you are the head of the household, and that the woman is your wife, and the rest of the
I
family.
heard this yesterday on NPR. I mean, I just want you to know, I was
Yeah.
listening on NPR yesterday about wanting to do some restorative, removing women from being able to go to medical schools and to become scientists and engineers so that they could go back to their home and they can do what they do best and be homemakers. So
Yeah.
they want to prevent women from being able to have successful careers.
It's more than that. These Authentic Manhood classes, they're meant to, like, on serious, especially like religious, like serious, any thoughtful idea is supposed to go through the man. The man is supposed to delegate, and like the class that the people that they're teaching in this class, the men that they're teaching this to, these are guys who are locked up for beating their girlfriends, their wives. They're like, there's some guys are in there for sex trafficking. These are not the guys who need to be hearing that, especially.
If you're within the sound of my voice, you are listening or watching the Sterling Spin podcast. I am very excited to bring you a new spin on living your best life and solutions for your well-being. I'm Liz Sterling, and we're ready for today's program. My guest is Ryan Forbes. While working as a software developer in Texas, Ryan one night drank too much at happy hour, blacked out, and ended up behind the wheel killing someone. That experience changed his life in an instant. He spent 6 years in a Texas prison, and it reshaped his understanding of the criminal justice system and his life. And as a result of that, he's gotten involved in restorative justice. But Ryan, I don't want to wait one more second. Like, when I say your life switched on an instant, it's like, they say on a dime it turned around.
Yes. Well, yeah, I mean, it's going to change it on an instant. Start from the very beginning. After the night of the crash, they found me a mile from the scene, barefoot, and like
You blacked out, you said.
Yeah, I blacked out.
So you don't remember?
I don't remember. I didn't know where I was, what was going on, and there was a helicopter and police, and a police officer running around calling my name, and I just walked straight up to him. I'm like, okay, you found me. Like, what? Then that was, because and they're asking me what's going on. I'm like, I can't tell you. I had at that point, vague visions of like maybe some memories of what was going on, but I'm like, I don't remember, and I don't know what's going on. And then from there went to the hospital, and then the blackouts continue during that period until the next morning when I wake up in the hospital and they take me to jail from there.
So did you get tested to see what your alcohol level was? And was that it? Or was it something else going on neurologically when you say you kept on having blackouts?
Well, so there's a couple things. Yeah, they tested me. My alcohol was through the roof.
Okay.
So yeah.
So that was the cause. It was drunk driving.
That was the cause, but I will say this, because this is an issue that did come up at the time of the crash. I do have epilepsy. I was taking epilepsy medicine. And on top of that, one of the things that also kind of escalated things was, for a month at that point, I had just started taking antidepressants, and because I had been these were ones where I was in therapy. And I was like, I had moved into a new town, and I was like, I was like feeling depressed, and they're like, here, these ranch, like on like the lowest dose possible. So it just started kicking in. And when I went out drinking, it was like everything, like all of my emotions, like suddenly went from being like this muted middle ground to immediately being turned on. And when that happened,
Oh, wow.
I was like, great, this is great.
I can feel
Everything's,
again.
yeah, I can feel things again.
Let
It's
me
good.
ask you a question
Yeah.
about that. Because I'm wondering, we're sitting here and there's a lot of talk now about PTSD, about people who have trauma in their lives and it gets activated. On a scale of like 1 to 10, when you talk about that night and when you talk about yourself and your rehabilitation, what on 1 to 10 is your emotional level?
Well, that's a hard one because
Yeah.
my emotional level is high. Like me, like it's like I'll say at least a 6, but it's not. My emotional level is not. It's not due to PTSD. There was a time where it was definitely there was
How many years ago are we going?
well in like the years immediately following, so 2 to 3 years.
PTSD
Like,
and high
yeah.
level of emotional reactivity.
Right.
Okay.
And there was and but the reason the reasons, I mean, one, it is an emotional topic, but the reason I can talk about it, the reason I do talk about it is because it drives into the part like I want to talk about it because it is part of what I feel my purpose is of figuring out of like helping to prevent this from happening to someone else.
So a lot of people say everything happens for a reason,
Yeah.
and that when you're in a situation, you can't necessarily understand how it's going to contribute to what you do think or act in the future. So you are affirming and confirming that that event was an integral part of your life's purpose.
So before the crash, if you had asked me what is your purpose, I would have said my purpose is to start a multi-million-dollar tech company and to do really well and to make some software that's going to really help change society. That was what I would have told you.
That was the trajectory you were on, right?
That was.
Yeah.
And I was working my way up towards that purpose. And part of what led to the crash was me spending all my time focusing on what do I need to do to become a better software developer, to spend more time at work, to get more money, focus on this career, and not on taking care of myself and realizing these other issues that were going on. So these issues were like the fact that I wasn't taking the time to actually discuss these, like to look at these things, that was doing me harm and ultimately led to the crash. Then afterwards, the purpose aspect of it was something which directly resulted from the crash, but it was something that it took a little more time to kind of coalesce.
Actually,
Yes.
you're illustrating that right this second. Like,
Okay.
And I appreciate that. When someone talks about having a life-changing moment and then understanding that is a purpose or a reason, it doesn't just show up and it's not on a blackboard written in chalk and it goes, okay, now you understand your life purpose. It has to rise up and coalesce over a period of time where it comes together and you're like, oh, that's what I'm meant to do. That's what my life is. So that's what I'm hearing you say. And I want to continue on this, but I also would like to address, I'm sorry I have to say this, is a life worth 6 years? I feel like I'm hearing someone say, you took someone's life and you only spent 6 years in prison? How is that possible?
Okay. Yeah. And if you ask my victim's family, they would say the exact same thing. They're like, they didn't want to hear from me again. And to that I say, there is, and kind of on the note of what you were saying too about everything happens for a reason. I don't feel like there's any reason for that young man not to be here today. I don't feel like even me getting to a better place is any justification for him not being here.
So everything does not happen for a reason because he should be here.
They do happen for a reason. I don't want me being a better person to justify him not being here.
I hear you loud and clear. I got it.
And the other part is that the part, so 6 years of me in prison, which is only a piece of the sentence, but that doesn't matter. Either way, it doesn't justify it. There is no evening in the scoreboard. What I will say about that is that it should have been up to the family. Like, I, from the very beginning, never denied that I killed the young man. It was my fault.
As a matter of fact, I read an article and you were like, I am fully responsible for my actions and what happened, which I really appreciated you saying that. My goodness, imagine if we all were accountable for the things that we've done to harm others, we would have a much kinder world. You know, we would feel a lot safer and more trusting. So thank you for having that accountability and taking responsibility. So from day one, you took responsibility. You agreed that you did it. So when it came to his family...
Yeah, so when it comes to the family, I would have loved to work with them. If they had said, you know, we want you to pay for the funeral. We need counseling. We want you to pay for it. We want you to help you in ways to make up for the fact that he is not here, which there's a million ways that I can't. But in any way that I can, I want to, without question. And if there's ways that they want me to make sure that I don't do the things that caused the accident then, I want to make sure that they would know that. However, that
didn't happen.
That is not how the criminal justice system works in our society or in any society, really. It is not about sentencing is not about what the victim wants. It's not about finding healing or figuring out ways to make sure the thing doesn't happen again. It's about punishment. At the end of the day, it's about finding blame, and then punishment at the end.
And the family wanted you to be punished.
The family...
Did they? How did that relationship with the family...
And there's an analogy that I saw, and I thought it was very accurate. If there's a vegan who's lost in the desert, and all of a sudden they see a hamburger stand, and they go and they buy the first hamburger they see and they eat it, and they're smiling and they're happy, and you go, see, you like meat. Because that's all they were offered.
That's all they saw.
That was all that was there. They were starving in the desert. They were in pain, suffering, and this is what you give them. Yeah, they did want me behind bars because that was what was offered to them.
Right.
That was the only thing that was offered to them.
So you wanted to make a proposal, and nobody would let you do that.
I didn't know that was an option.
I see. So it is an option. Is there another way to work the system so that it could be rehabilitative rather than punitive? I think those are the right words, right? For rehabilitation versus punishment.
The word for this is restorative, and that's where it comes from, restorative justice, which is another option, which many places, even Texas, where I got my charges at, restorative justice is used in many cases. However, for serious cases like mine, where there's a death, where there's violence, where there's serious felony charges, they generally don't use them. That you
They don't use any restorative justice. So,
that's not available generally.
okay. Well, here's a reality. How
Yeah.
many years ago did the accident happen?
The accident happened 11 years ago now.
And 6 years in prison.
Yes.
Okay. So you've been out in the world. It's almost six years back in the world. 5 years because it took some time.
Yeah, I've been 4 years because I had
4
a
years.
year on bond.
Back in the world.
Yes.
How did you end up being like? To me, you're okay. You're actually. I want to introduce Ryan Forbes, my sound engineer. He's working with me and with Anthony, my producer. And today I have Aldo, who's on the soundboard, and I want to thank you too. He's helping. He's helping people in the world and making a difference. And something happened to you that was restorative. It just may have happened to you singularly. So you're going to hear more about the story. Ryan Forbes, he was a regular person with great aspirations, and he wanted to become successful in the tech industry. And one night after happy hour, he got behind the wheel, and he was driving and killed someone. That is a big to-do. And you're listening to our story here on the Sterling Spin as we're looking at how his life has unfolded since then. But every one of you who's watching knows that your life is also, something has happened unexpected and you've changed on a dime. So I'm going to be bringing you here on the Sterling Spin podcast ways in which your well-being can be restored. And we're going to spin new stories every single week. You're watching here on YouTube, please hit subscribe. After that, look for a little bell, hit the bell, and every time we drop a new show, you will be notified. Please leave your comments and share it with a friend and keep tuning in to the Sterling Spin. And I'm Liz Sterling, and I thank you. And Ryan, thank you for allowing me to take that little break so I can let people know who's here and what we're doing. All right, so something happened to you that you are showing up in this studio. You are working and helping people to learn how to use media to improve their lives. You founded a company called Wayward Press, and you have worked in the restorative justice industry, and you wrote a novel. You have a podcast called the Shakedown Project podcast. So you have something happened. Now, you weren't in a system where there was restorative justice. You were in a punitive system, but something happened to you. Was it a moment, or did it also coalesce over time that made you say you want to be a person who makes a difference in the world?
Well, I guess it was over time, and it's never like it wasn't necessarily about making a difference in the world. It's about the fact that the real key for me when it came down to what like really started it off was when I was sitting in the jail cell figuring out, and I was looking at what was going to happen next. And I think this was probably right before I had to call someone and tell them that I was in the jail. Someone at I had just killed someone in a car crash, basically, and what did I want to? Where was this going to go from here?
It was the same day or within a day of it happening that something happened to you, that the switch flicked, or is that what it is? Like, something turned on?
You have to remember, my life's purpose up to this point was like it was very clearly defined for me. That was my life's purpose, was to become like this big time software developer. That and there was no moment where I was like, it's like, I just blacked out, or maybe I didn't do it because I was blacked out. Maybe it was something else. Maybe something else happened. No, I was like, no, this happened. So now what?
I knew you were going to say those words. This happened.
Right.
So now I've got the picture. I see you having to say out loud what you've done to someone.
Yeah.
And knowing that that ideal life that you were envisioning, that was not going to happen the way you envisioned.
Right. So that purpose is pretty much gone. So I knew at that point that that purpose is gone. So if that purpose is gone, what do I want to do from here? What is then I've been wrong about everything I've been kind of living up to at this point.
To that point.
To that point, I've been living to that point, I've been living up to this false idea that I'm going to be this amazing software developer.
And what are you now? An amazing what? I'm sorry. I mean, you set me up for it. I had to do it. I'm like, you are an amazing what now, today, 11 years later?
Hopefully I'm a halfway decent person. That's all I'm really hoping for.
I think 3/4 the way decent person, at least.
All right.
Yes,
I'll take that.
You really are, like, whatever it is that you've done. When I first met you, my sense is that you were more heart than you were, work. Like, your heart showed up first before you. Now, I mean, you're wearing that Bucky guy on your heart today. I don't know if that could be seen. I mean, it's really cute. But he brings out the best in people. You brought out the best in me. So I want to say thank you. I'm not going to cry on the air. You looked at me and you're like, wow, Liz, you sound really good. I like what you're doing. I want to support you in that. And you were like, boom, Johnny on the spot. So thank you for being someone who is a halfway decent person and sees the best in others. And that's what that's what I wanted when I brought you on the air, is for, I guess, is there such a thing as redemption? Is that a word that's in your vocabulary?
It's in my vocabulary, but that's also it's not what I've ever been looking for. A lot of times there are like these there's programs. They're not, I won't call them classes or anything, or like rehabilitation in prison. But there are these programs that you can take. And a lot of them, like, I took every program in prison that you could think of because I'm hoping that it could help me make parole. And the topic of forgiveness came up all the time. And one thing that I would always do, and like with the volunteers who I always, FYI, anyone who volunteers in prison, my heart goes out to you. You're a hero. I truly, sincerely believe that. So
I agree.
Yeah, it's a big commitment.
I absolutely know one of my teachers, my Zen teacher. He's worked with someone who started the Human Kindness Foundation.
Oh, yeah.
Bo Lozoff, you probably know. He wrote the book, We're All Doing Time.
Which
Did you get that book?
I read before I went into prison, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I used to watch him every week. He would go to the prisons, and I ended up with a prison pen pal. And I kept that for about 5 years until the prisoner got released. And so I've been involved, in the periphery, but also directly. And so I'm very sensitive to that. And I'm glad that you put a call out to say, hey, if you volunteer in the prisons, thank you. So you did everything that you could to get re-educated, and we were talking a little bit about redemption, which isn't a word that you use, and it's not even a rehabilitative because that's not happening in the prisons, and so there's something comfortable enough to use the word restorative. But what's really, really happening? Because you've been on the inside for 6 years. What's happening inside those prisons?
Well, like I said, it's not, those classes are not rehabilitative, or some might say some of them are restorative, but they're not. There's some sort, the reason they're not is because when you come in restorative justice, like you have Bright Collaborative here, or you have Boulder County Restorative Justice. The whole point is the restoration, the getting everyone whole and finding them the help they need. That's it. There's no secondary mission that they have.
But you talked about forgiveness.
Forgiveness. I'm going to come back to that here in a second and bring that back to where you're talking about redemption. in the prison programs, there was always a secondary mission. Usually in Texas, and you're going into prison, they're trying to proselytize. They're trying to convert you to Christianity, and so that was generally the secondary mission. And sometimes they did it in some really, really, I feel, unfortunate and misguided ways. Sometimes they did it in some really sweet, caring and thoughtful ways, but sometimes it was in some really really unfortunate ways, especially for, I feel like, men who, like, because I was in a men's prison, like for men who like needed some serious help.
Like hellfire kind of stuff?
Well,
And
my
brimstone, like,
biggest example is there's this class called Authentic Manhood. All right, in Authentic Manhood, you are taught that as the man, you are the head of the household, and that the woman is your wife, and the rest of the
I
family.
heard this yesterday on NPR. I mean, I just want you to know, I was
Yeah.
listening on NPR yesterday about wanting to do some restorative, you know, removing women from being able to go to medical schools and to become scientists and engineers so that they could go back to their home and they can do what they do best and be homemakers. So
Yeah.
they want to prevent women from being able to have successful careers.
It's more than that. These Authentic Manhood classes, they're meant to, like, on serious, especially like religious, like serious, any thoughtful idea is supposed to go through the man. The man is supposed to delegate, and like the class that the people that they're teaching in this class, the men that they're teaching this to, these are guys who are locked up for beating their girlfriends, their wives. They're like, there's some guys are in there for sex trafficking. These are not the guys who need to be hearing that, especially. They don't know how to process any of this information. So it's incredibly dangerous. And this is like, in this class, they're like, these are one of the few classes that probation will look, or parole will look at when you come up for parole. So like, all guys are itching to get into this class as soon as possible. And it's one of the few programs that are available in Texas state
and this
prisons.
is what you're referring to as like Christian indoctrination.
Yes, this is one of those
So,
dangerous ways of Christian indoctrination.
I mean, I'm a little overwhelmed that I would hear the same information twice within 24 hours.
Yeah.
That kind of scares me a little bit, and I'm like, oh my goodness. But I'm going to move that aside for the moment so that I don't have to like go off on a tangent, and I'll reframe my mind and I'll do like a little personal spin, right? Because we have to. This is the Sterling spin, so I get to spin it around. So what is the best of this? Because you use the word forgiveness, and I'm like, in forgiveness, there's something very liberating, very beautiful, very freeing.
And so this is what I want to say about forgiveness, and this is where I brought when I wanted to bring up the volunteers and everything. They would talk about forgiveness in these classes a lot. And as someone who kept the volunteers on their toes, I would come back at them and say, forgiveness was never one of my goals. It's not up to me to earn forgiveness. If my victims want to forgive me, okay, that's great, wonderful.
You mean the victims, meaning the family of the person
right,
that you
that I
killed.
Yes,
You have to say that.
Yes,
I'm like, you have to say, I killed somebody.
yeah, I killed that. Yes, and then
I think it's like most people's greatest fear on the road. And I talk to women who are older, some of my students, and they're like, my greatest fear is I'll be driving in the car and something will happen, or I'll look away, or I'll get distracted, or I won't see her somewhere across the road and I'll kill someone. People have that as one of the biggest fears. I don't know if that makes, if it's logical, but it is.
You know, I really wish that, like, I don't feel like enough people have the same amount of fear and respect for like human life to have that as one of their greatest fears anymore, because of the way that death is talked about now. Like, it is not something that like, I do not we mentioned PTSD earlier.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but you are piquing my interest when you start talking about death. So.
Yeah, well, believe me, there's much more there. But right after the accident, the first when I had like really bad PTSD when it came to cars, my dad drove me 14 hours from Texas here back to Colorado, and that's when I realized I cannot be in cars. I don't want to be in a car. I don't want to see a car. Then what happened was I started realizing I can't watch TV because I could not believe every time someone turned on a TV around me, there would be a car crash on the TV. Just leave a TV on in the background and just count how many car crashes happen just casually in a commercial, on a TV show, on the evening news.
Right.
On
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
That's how insurance is sold, and cars. This car is safe, right? Shows a crash. Look how safe it is. So yeah, they use it in many ways. So you were attuned.
Yes.
Like really attuned to the cars, to the crashes, to
right, and then so the cars, the crashes, and then also to the fragility of life. So now I'm like, now that I've seen how quickly life can disappear, everything was incredibly scary at that point. I still have a bit of that, like a bit more of that than usual, but the amount of the way that we talk about just casually starting a war or casually like things are just, it's okay that that where people could potentially die.
No, I was just looking at a situation where I had this past weekend, and I had to call the police because I felt like I was in harm's way. And what the deputy said is, you can carry a concealed weapon. It's okay. So I went to go look online for like someplace where would I buy a gun or would I get trained? And all I saw were AK-50s. I'm like, what? I mean, I saw these guns, like machine guns. Like, why would people have these? Why would they be carrying? Why would they be promoting them? Why would they be selling them? And that really gave me a fragility of life. Like, anybody could have like a machine gun. And I went blank, and I like closed up the page, and I was like, I don't want to look at this anymore. So you were dealing with the fragility of life. We're talking about forgiveness. We're talking about death. We're talking about how people deal with death now. Can you fill me in on that? Can you finish that thought? Because I'm very curious. Like, what do you think is going on?
I mean, the guns is a great example. It's mainly and that's mainly like, so we have this gun debate overall, and there's one side of the argument is that one side is we need to either have less guns or we need to have more precautions with them, and the other side is we need to arm everyone to the teeth and just make sure they're well trained. And one side of it is like, why, if it makes a gun like a car makes it very even easier to kill someone, and this idea that you have this thing that can kill someone so readily accessible, and
that's what put me on pause for a moment. I'm like, wow, I could be put in a situation where I would be trained and I would use this gun and then I would kill someone. So I just leaned back and I was like, okay, I'll wait until after I talk to Ryan.
Yeah, and there's a lot of there's regulation, there's a lot of talk about regulations of like making teachers, giving them the idea that they need to shoot one of their students, which I like. As a parent, that should make your blood run cold. Like, it's the idea of sending your child to a place where someone might have to shoot them.
It's shocking.
It is shocking.
But also, you know what it does? For me, it produces an entire shutdown in my system. When I hear certain things, My system doesn't know how to process it. It's so foreign. The idea is so appalling. It's so overwhelming. I'm like, ugh. And I just push it, I like suck in the air. I stop breathing and I push it away. It's not a healthy way to react. I mean, you're definitely inciting me to look further at some of the choices that we make. And I'm glad that I know that I have to be very attentive when I'm driving because I don't want to kill someone. I don't want to hurt someone. I don't want to get in an accident. I don't want to hurt myself. So you had that whole driving thing happened after you killed someone while you were behind the wheel, and you also were under the influence. I'm just assuming, and I'm going to bring us starting to wrap up so we can pull it all together. I want to make sure that people know that you believe in restorative justice. You did not like what you saw happening in the Texas prison. You were exposed to something that, made you wake up and think differently. So how did you handle it?
So there's two things. There's restorative justice, which I learned about while I was in Texas prison, and I was kind of that was really upsetting. I was studying sociology while I was locked up, and also Texas law, and I was learning. I realized that I was like, there's a thing where I can actually talk to the victim and find we can work together to find something that helps them. I'm like, I would have loved this, and so that's restorative justice. And restorative justice, like I said, mostly they use it with juveniles for non-serious cases, and it helps prevent them from going to jail and prison and juvenile detention in the first place, which is huge. Great. I think it should be used more often. I did a whole graphic novel where I talk about it. The other part is I also very firmly believe in transformative justice. Transformative justice is recognizing that sometimes people do things wrong because there's a whole system in place that is keeping them stuck in wherever they're at. Maybe the reason the same liquor store in the same 6-block radius keeps getting robbed every weekend is because they can't find a job, and there needs to be more jobs. There needs to be more. We need to find a way to help with the wealth disparity in that area.
So you want to look at the cause.
Right. The cause.
Through the effect.
The cause, and this should not be a controversial thing to say, but it ends up being controversial, is that the cause may not be an individual. It may be a systemic problem that needs to be addressed overall. And the person just may be a symptom of a much larger problem that needs to be addressed.
That's what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah.
Which is the same thing like in corporations. They're going to look at the culture. And taking in the whole culture, they get to see what's contributing to someone not wanting to go into work and calling in too frequently and being absent or not being able to perform at their highest abilities. So you want to look at society and see what is systemic that's causing the individual to make the choices that they're making. So you were on a trajectory that something in you needed to be stopped. And it happened as a result of you getting behind the wheel, driving drunk, and killing someone. And your life as a result of that has developed into helping others, educating people, becoming my sound engineer. Thank you very much, Ryan Forbes. And you teach other people how to produce, to work with video, to work with sound. I know we're going to have to make a huge jump in order to wrap this up, but take us through how you got to where you are. And Wayward Press is the name of your website. It's WAYWORDPRESS. And is there a reason for that name? So anywhere you want to go from here.
Okay, so Wayward, which was meant to be a play on way with word. So way with WordPress. And the way it started was actually as a publishing company. I published first one of my buddies who spent 30 years in prison. We both got out around the same time, and we started. We worked on a comic book together. We were planning on working on more, and so I wanted to work with start publishing our books together. We published one, and then I published the graphic novel. But then in that meantime, what ended up happening was that I started doing these podcasting classes because I had been doing the Shakedown for now over 3 years, where I've been doing
The Shakedown podcast. That's your podcast.
Yes,
Yeah.
the Shakedown podcast, and I had learned really the hard way, like of how to do a podcast, how to set up a YouTube channel, how to what are what are the different pipelines for getting viewers? What are the
Can we talk?
yeah, yes. And what are different, and then what are the different setups for productions? Because if you look at this, this took a few people to set up, and I've been doing this for a while, by myself, trying to figure this out, learning from other experts in the industry. And
Yeah, we've got 2 large lights. We've got 3 cameras. We've got somebody on the soundboard because you're not there right now.
Right.
Producer Anthony's here. So there's a lot happening in this little space. And you realized you can help people to learn the ins and outs of podcasting and working with video, and you help others. So let's put a shout out, talk to the camera, tell them how they can get in touch with you. And do you also work on Zoom, or does it have to be in person?
Yes.
How are you doing that?
So I do. I work on if you're here in Longmont or in the surrounding areas, I work with a bunch of different studios in the area, and we can meet in person at one of the different studios or at the Chamber of Commerce, or I also can do remote classes using Riverside.fm, which Riverside.fm is usually what a lot of podcasters use to do remote hosting. I've done interviews with people on the other side of the planet, talking about the criminal legal system and things like that. So if you want firsthand experience, doing an online class will work great. And I can work with you on what type of equipment you need, based on whatever budget you have. And one of the reasons I like doing this, teaching the classes, is because the thing that makes me one of the happiest in the world is when I watch someone skip over a mistake that took me months to understand I was even making.
That's great. You're a good guy, Ryan Forbes.
Thank you.
I was going to say Charlie Brown, but nah, it wasn't going to work. I mean, you wanted to be a halfway decent person. You're 100%.
Oh, thank you.
You're really a good guy. I'm so grateful for you to be on the team. I'm so sorry for the life that part of your life that you had to experience, and yet I'm really, truly grateful that it brought you to where you are today, that we could be sitting in these chairs and doing the work that we're doing and making a difference and helping others. Oh, boy, here's Liz again. Liz Sterling, thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. This is Sterling Spin Podcast, and please subscribe, right? I mean, I could have said it 10 times, but I'm saying it now. Hit the subscribe button, and then you'll see a little bell. Hit the bell, and you'll be notified every time we drop a new program. It's going to be weekly, so keep your eyes open, keep your ears open. Thank you for tuning in. Leave a comment, share it with a friend, and thank you for joining me today on the Sterling Spin. Thanks. See you again.